Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
you can move a little bit away from that window.
Away from that window. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me move this bag. Yeah, I got so many birthday gifts from flowers
Wow.
to popcorn. I gotta give a shout
Yeah.
out to
I love popcorn. I got some for Mother's Day.
yes. Hey Neil, what's going on? Yeah, it was a good birthday.
Great, great, great.
It was a good birthday, and it started out, it wasn't. I didn't wake up in any kind of mood. I was like, hey, okay. Neil says he has no audio. You can hear me, and Ray can hear me.
Yeah.
Neil, you want to try to log in, log out? Maybe I don't. I'm not sure. Um, I look like I have sound on my end. Let me check the comment section. Uh, thanks, Joe. Hey, Olga. Good evening. Oh yeah. So anyway, it has been a remarkable birthday. I cannot say enough good things about this birthday. Okay, Neil says he figured it out. Cool. Glad to have you, Neil. Glad to have you. So good. So I'm excited about tonight's conversation because, well, what can I say? Reincarnation. And I'm going to share with you guys some things that Reverend Della um, taught that opened my mind to reincarnation. I'll start with this caveat. Okay. I'm still now. Everybody can hear, see. Yes. Okay. All right. So so reincarnation. So this topic, one of the things that's great about New Thought is that there is no um dogma. There's nothing that we teach in New Thought where it's like you got to accept it or else, or you can't consider yourself a New Thought Christian. Every belief, no matter what it is, even when we talk about the omnipresence of God, it's like, look, make this true for yourself. So that was always attractive to me about New Thought Christianity. And so when I read a couple of things, I think in the New Thought Christian, which is the William Warch book that we use for lessons in Basic Truth 1, and I think there's a mention of reincarnation, and it's like, well, y'all told me I didn't need to accept it, so I'm I'm gonna put that one on the shelf. I'm not gonna deal with that. So it was many years before I heard something that sounded worth considering, and so that's what I want to share with you tonight. I want to share with you the things that Reverend Della taught me, and then we're going to use Eric Butterworth's chapter on Did Jesus Teach Reincarnation also as a backdrop for this conversation. So that's where we are tonight. All right. And remember, I always have two ways that I have to do this. I think I got to figure something out so I don't always have to do that switch. Okay. What's your take on reincarnation? And specifically, the question that Eric asks is, did Jesus teach reincarnation? We've got some announcements, opening prayer, why the power within you matters, the case for reincarnation, Jesus's thoughts on reincarnation, and then Q&A. And of course, please ask questions throughout. This is such a potent topic that I really want you to ask as many questions as you can, because that's going to help this conversation and help us really tease this subject out. So there is no question that you should not ask. Don't feel shy, and I'll go back and forth between the chat room and the film strip to see if there are any questions. Thank you. Joe says, did you ever find out the book that Reverend Della was reading from? I did not, Joe. I did not. Thank you, Linda. I actually got this. I was on the women's retreat. She said, beautiful necklace. I got this on the women's retreat in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, which is right where Georgia and Florida meet. Right. What's your why? So this week, if you're on the MBH Insider list, I sent a blog post out that I stumbled across. I was doing some other research, but it talks about what's your why. And I think and what he says in the article, and he's not the first person to say it, but what he says is that the two most important moments of your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why you were born. And one of my whys is teaching. It is why I was born. There is something for me that is emotionally satisfying. And honestly, it does not really matter what it is. I could teach the phone book. There's just something in this exchange. There's something in this experience of what we're doing here tonight, but it doesn't even have to be this forum. It could be an in-person forum. It can be, something like a live audience, meaning like in a stadium, or it can be two people, me working one-on-one with somebody in a room. There's just something deeply satisfying. And then second to that is my love of the Bible and my love of spiritual topics. And so I thought, why not combine the two? And I heard about this thing called Google Hangout. This was way before YouTube Live and way before people were, doing classes and stuff online. And I just wanted to share this stuff that made a difference for me in somebody else's life. And so that's why, even though today is my birthday, yay, happy birthday, I'm here because I can't even imagine being somewhere else in the world. I would still make time to do this. And so I love it. And I think that when you find your why, when you find the thing that you were meant to do, you do it no matter what. You do it because it's the thing that drives you and it's the thing that you love, and it loves you back. Because when you do it, like I've been still catching my breath from this past weekend with the ordination and the installation. And even though I was yawning like no less than like an hour before, I feel no sense of tiredness in my body. I mean, none whatsoever, that I am completely awake and present to this moment. There's something that happens for me in this kind of exchange. And so I think it's so important to find what's that thing for you. Well, and yours may be teaching. I tend to attract teachers, but what's that thing for you that even though you may be tired, like I said, this week I've been trying to get back to one as far as order in my life after a really incredible weekend. And so but what is that for you? I think that's important. I think you need to find that because it changes your life. And it brings so much joy and peace. And I, there's a quote from William Blake that says, eternity, and eternity being a synonym for God, that eternity is in love with the creations of time, that when you find that thing that brings you joy to do it, that God is in love with that vessel, because it means that more of him gets to flow out into expression. But I love that eternity is in love with the creations of time. The Bible Hangout is free, but it does cost. And so I do ask, if this has benefited you and has made a difference for you, would you consider making a gift? There are many costs that are involved with bringing it to you. I don't pass those on, but I do ask that you consider it and consider a gift that will help offset those costs. And a gift of any size makes a difference, and it's greatly appreciated. That gift can be made right at revsherri.com. It's made via PayPal. And I thank you in advance for your support. It really does make a difference, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you. The way that this series has worked, we've had a blog. The blog comes out normally early on Thursday. I was late today. I had so many incredible birthday gifts that flowed into my experience that I literally was like 5 o'clock hitting send on and publish on the blog post, and then the Bible Hangout at 7 o'clock. And so you can dial in that way. And I also should mention that there is an ongoing Wednesday night prayer call. It started when we were doing the prayer series in summer, late summer, early fall last year, but it's still going. And so if you want to be a part of that Wednesday night mastermind prayer call, it's free. There's no cost, anything to it, meaning, well, there's freeconferencecall.com, and there is the call, maybe a toll call, depending on how your phone service is set up. But other than that, I say, come on, be a part of it. It is really, I mean, it is a magical call. The things that we have created. One woman, I can't share her name, but prayed for a mate on the call. And this was maybe 2 months ago, she prayed for a mate. And this past Wednesday, she was like, and I want you to know that he showed up. And I was like, well, all right, for this Wednesday night call. So we've dealt with illness, we've dealt with love, relationships, we've dealt with money, all of it. So I encourage you to join the call. And if you're interested, you can email me directly at Sherri@revsherri.com, and I will add your name to the list. I don't send it out on my email list. I send it to a private list through my private Gmail account. So it doesn't, it comes like a personal email from me. So if you're interested, let me know. And Alita says it's powerful. Yes. Houses. Yes. We've done it. I'm telling you that there's something to that collective consciousness. And then there's a momentum that develops like now that we know that the things that we say shall come to pass, prayers are becoming bolder and more intentional, and even just to be in that vibratory, prayer energy. So I encourage you to jump on that Wednesday night prayer call. And again, just send me a quick email and I'll add your name to the list. And I just send out a reminder on Tuesdays for the prayer call on Wednesday. Panorama of Truth is coming August 9th through the 13th. We are nearing the deadline for paying your money, May 31st. So I encourage you to get your cash, your coins in, and get in there so that you can be a part of this experience. This conference is absolutely amazing, and it is wonderful. And I hope that you will be there. Neil said, I'm sorry, Neil, I missed your comment earlier. He says, I think a belief in reincarnation might not be part of one's life path if one feels a strong resistance to the idea. We're going to talk about that. Yes, we are. Eves, you're a Gemini too. When's your birthday? Linda, I will definitely, I think you're referring to the prayer call. I think you're on it. But anyway, I will add you to the list. Hold on. The scripture for this series is, once Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God was coming, and he answered, the kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor will they say, look, here it is, or there it is. For in fact, the kingdom of God is within you. And that's Luke 17:20 and 21. And so let's just take a moment to relax and be in this space, be in this moment of possibility. And I just call on the energy intelligence that is God, the good, omnipotent, the everywhere, evenly present spirit of absolute good that moves according to the thoughts that I present and that we each present. And so we are individually and collectively co-creating our experience with the one power and the one presence. We call forth that presence tonight for illumination, for wisdom. And wisdom. Let there be light. That as we look out on the deep, as we look out across this concept called reincarnation, there be light. Enable us to separate the waters from the waters, to discern the bigger light from the smaller light. Enable us to see the creatures that swarm in the sea and those that move on land and those that travel by air. As we look at this concept, reveal to us nuances that we may not have considered. And let us walk away more open, more alert, more alive to the possibilities in this grand, infinite. We are open, Father. We are receptive. Teach us tonight. Thank you, God. Through the power that is in the name of Jesus the Christ, we affirm that it is so, and so it is. And amen. So here we come to a card that we have seen often, and that card is specifically why the power within matters. You have all this power within. Your capacity is unlimited, and your purpose is perfection. You must have some means for fulfilling your capacity. You must have some means for fulfilling your capacity, that this power must have some process by which it flows into expression. And this is part of our conversation tonight, which is, then does that happen? It goes out of you into expression. And so the conversation tonight then is reincarnation. And we're going to look at reincarnation as perhaps a possible explanation of how the power flows through you into expression. But it matters because it cannot go anywhere until you make it go somewhere. You cannot go anywhere until you make it go somewhere. And you make it go somewhere by your thinking. You make it go somewhere by your process of considering and multiplying the ideas that you receive from God. And so your capacity is infinite. You tap your capacity by the quality of your thoughts. And your ultimate purpose is perfection. So even if it takes you 10,000 lifetimes, that you will still fulfill your capacity. Power within. And so this is why this power matters, is because it must have some means for you to get. A large part of what we see with criminality and other what we would call aberrant forms of expression are often the result of an inability to express the power within. There have been studies on jails and prison populations, and that the simple act of educating the prisoners changes what they desire for themselves and lowers the recidivism rate. Thing that happens that think of school as you go to school so that you can get a job, but the purpose of school is so that you can learn how to take the power within you and express it and press it out into expression. That, okay, so if you are in an English class and you're studying poetry, you have music in you. let's use music. Let's use the music class. You have music in you. It is natural to who you are because music is from God and you are from God. Therefore, music is in you. Whether you play an instrument or not, whether you sing or not, music is in you. That's why it can touch you, because it's in you. The ability to express musical talent, whether you think of yourself as musically talented or not. But until you learn how to play an instrument or read sheet music or right, and I shouldn't say until, because obviously there are people who play by ear or play by sight and not necessarily know how to read music. But until they actually began to do something with the they had, it just lay dormant. And so all of us have music inside of us. We have physics inside of us. We have chemistry inside of us. We have poetry inside of us. We have all of these things inside of us that part of school is for the process of learning how to let it out in an orderly way. How to let it flow through. Yes, getting a job is a byproduct, but I do not believe that that is the sole purpose of why you go to school. I think you learn how to go to school so that you can learn how to let the power within you out into expression. And the byproduct of that is that you learn something that can then be create value for you in the marketplace. But in an ultimate sense, it is about allowing what is in you to come out into expression. And when you talk to the prisoners or listen to, if you read any of their stories or anyone that's written a biography or who has turned their life around, they turn their life around when they got an education and when they found their purpose, that they had, and they had a reason. And so this power within is that it must have some means by which to come into expression. Stifle it. You can't, there's no such thing as stifling it. You may move slowly, but there's no such thing as stifling it. And you harm yourself when you try to squelch it in another. So the problem with poor public policy is not just that everybody has the ability to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but you harm your own soul trying to keep from somebody else what is theirs to express. You harm yourself. Both the jailer and the jailed are in jail. We concentrate on the, depending on the community that you're in, we concentrate often on the jailed, but the jailer is there too. What if you repurpose resources? What could you do if you had a different approach? If you had a different approach to crime? What could you do? What could we become if we took a different approach? Yes, there are people that may be out of their minds mentally, and they may need to be restrained. But at the rate that we're putting people away, come on. There must be some means by which you let the power within you out into expression. And I know I feel like I'm kind of going all over the place, but I want you to get that this power within is so important that when you do, the power will express. It must express. God must out itself through you. And if you have not been trained in healthy ways to do it, you will do it in unhealthy ways. Hopefully you will get in a community that supports you, that can stand in the gap and see the possibility for you. But the power will press out. It has no, that's just what it does. And the education that we get is for the purpose of funneling that power into constructive channels. This power will express. It's just a matter of what it's going to express as. Linda says, if we can't transform totally in this allotted time, it seems we would reincarnate in order to be fully aware of our true self. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's, well, we'll see. We'll see where everybody lands, but I think that's some of what we may come to tonight. So let me make the case for reincarnation, right? There are no limits to who and what you can be. There are no limits on your life. It doesn't matter what's happening in the government. It doesn't matter what's happening in anywhere in the universe. There are no limits to your personal expression. Whatever you believe you can be, you can be. No exceptions. Yet all that we accomplish must unfold according to spiritual principle. Even the most elaborate dream finds expression through the timeless formula of thought, which leads to feeling, which leads to word, which leads to action, which leads to reaction. Now, we may speed through this process, or we may move like a turtle through this process. Right? Sometimes you move so slowly, you wonder whether you will have time to accomplish all that lies in your heart. And so I think you have to ask the question is, am I not meant to express all that lies within my heart to do? Because I think anybody would tell you, I mean, you look at somebody like a Prince. Prince was composing music up until the day he died. And so the question is, could there be another possible explanation for how we are to release the treasure that has been housed in these earthen vessels? Or are we always meant to fall short? Are we, and that, I think you gotta sit with that. Are we always meant to fall short? I don't think there's not a person who has left the planet who we would say, oh, they were finished. You know, Michael Jackson, he did all the music that he was going to do. There were no more songs coming out of him. Prince, there were no more songs coming out of him. He took every song that he was going to do with him, right? I mean, and so the question is then, are we always meant to fall short? You got to think about the universe. Like, God is just and God is fair, right? So if I pass through this lifetime and all that I am does not get to press out into expression, does that make sense to you? Are we always meant to come up on the short end of the stick? And so the question then is, what gives? And then, you know, you always have people like, I don't know if you guys remember this little kid. He was featured on Oprah, and he wrote poetry, and he called them heart songs. And his name was Matty Stepanek. And he was the most delightful little kid. And I cannot remember how Oprah got in touch with him, you know, her show staff, but I mean, I can't remember like how he was on her show a number of times. And he had multiple sclerosis. His mom had multiple sclerosis, and all of his siblings had multiple sclerosis. And he was the only one to survive of his siblings that had multiple sclerosis. And it was degenerative, and it was known fairly early that he was not going to see adulthood. But I think he lived ultimately to be maybe 13 years old, something like that. But he wrote these incredible poems. How do you account for an old soul like that? You know, we had this young man here at Up Church. He was the firstborn son of our music director for years, TC Campbell. His son's name I can't call right now, but he was I feel like he was TC Jr. And he came here at 2 and 3, able to play the drums, got on the drums with the sticks, and in short order began to develop the talent to be able to play with his dad and with the other guys. How do you account for that? When I went to Sundance, this was years ago, not the most recent trip. I got to see this guy, and I can't call his name right now, but he was a virtuoso, and he played the piano. He played the piano and made the piano talk. All right. I can say I've heard somebody play a piano and make that piano talk. And what he did, there was, he's playing, and there was this like strained look on his face. And I remember thinking in the moment that it looks like he's translating in the moment what he's hearing, and it's coming faster than he can get it out on the keys. And the look on his face was like, do y'all hear what I hear? This music is basically being downloaded through me. How do you account for that? And, Eric asked at the beginning of the chapter, he gives 4 questions. This is on page 212. He says, if this life is but the preparation for another to come, how do we account for the inbred desire to live? We're told that we're here. They got tons of songs about when I get to heaven. Y'all know these songs, right? But if this life is the preparation for the life to come, then why do we invest billions of dollars, billions with a B, probably trillions, but let's stay with billions, in medical procedures and interventions and other things like that, if the purpose of this life is to get to the next life? And we have this inbred desire. Even the most rabid fundamentalist who believes in the glories of heaven will leave no stone unturned trying to get rid of a headache or an illness or some other malady. It's you think about that. It's like an inbred desire to survive. We even say that was the first law of nature survival? Survival is the first law of nature, or something like that, or self-preservation. Self-preservation is the first law of nature. So how is it then that this life is preparation for the next life? You got to. Sometimes we when we're given things to believe, we've got to question it. Neil says, I believe we are here in human form to learn to create and learn to create. It is a self-paced course, and everything does not have to be accomplished in one lifetime. I'm gonna agree with you on that. I'm gonna say yes, 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 yes. Yeah. Constance says, can't get it wrong because you'll never get it done. Yes. I love that from, I'm sure she said it more than once, but I have it in the Rampage of Invisibility. That's from Abraham. Here's the other question he asked. How do we account for the seemingly unfinished pattern of individual lives and the constantly progressive pattern of civilization that man builds? So we have this unfinished pattern of individual lives. You have somebody like a Prince who was playing music and composing. He went through writing. He didn't stop and say, you know what, God is through talking to me. I have no more songs to give. Just go play my old stuff. None of that, right? He's still writing, composing, developing, creating. Same thing with Michael Jackson. Even with all that he was going through, he was still creating, developing, writing, right? And so we've got this unfinished pattern of individual lives, but we've got this progressive pattern of the civilization that the things that we could do that we can do today in 2017, we couldn't even fathom, at least not as a collective group, in 1970, right? How do you account for that? That there is this upward trend, that if there was not a purpose for us being here, then why would civilization need to advance? If this life is but the pathway to the next life, what's the purpose of progress? Again, it is beginning to ask those questions and not just taking what has been given without question. He says, how do we account for the great inequality among men while we are told that all men are created equal? Is God then not a God of justice and fairness? Are we all supposed to arrive at the same goal, even though we start on different levels? It would appear that some have a head start, while others commence with a handicap. Some are born with a silver spoon in their mouths, while others are born on the wrong side of the tracks. Some are born minds and bodies, while others are born crippled or blind or with brain damage. Where is the justice? If we say that God is fair, impartial, equal, then how do we account for the gross inequalities that we see in our world? Cycles of people born into systems of poverty. What is that about? And I think this is the one that I just love. He says, this is on page 213. How can we say the soul is created at a point in time and then survives the death of the physical body and goes on living forever? Isn't it illogical and unscientific to say that we survived the body but did not pre-exist it? That we have a beginning but no end? Nothing in the universe works like that. Nothing in the universe works like that. And so I think that we gotta let these ideas be there and do something about it, not just move away from it. Linda says, Reverend Ann used to say souls are recycled. Yes, yes, yes. Neil says all life trends upward toward perfection. Yes, 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 absolutely. Yeah, but that's exactly it. The trees grow up; they don't grow down. So, you know, plants don't grow up. These roses, before they were, you know, roses, they were seeds, right? And there was a bush, and it was a bud before it became a full rose. That there is this order to the way that things work. And so but it seems, if you just study nature, that the purpose is that upward trend. The purpose is that continual growth, that continual expansion, that continual flowing out. And why then would that not be the case for us? If we see it repeated in nature, that God is faithful, God is consistent, things do not grow down, they grow up, right? That things do not grow in, they grow out. In fact, if they're growing in, they're dying. If they're growing down, they're dying. Because that means that the life force is petering out of the entity. You know, how do you know something is losing its life? If you've ever been with someone as they're making their transition from this life to whatever follows, whatever you believe follows, that what you see is the life force dwindling until finally you get to that final exhalation. But absence from the body does not mean absence from life, that life itself has ended. So I want to look at four passages of scripture for Jesus and the thoughts on reincarnation. There's Matthew 11, 13 through 14, Mark 9, 11 to 13, Matthew 16, 13 through 15, and John 9, 1 through 3. So those are the four. If you want to write those down, I'll leave that up for a second. I want to look at these four passages because these are four of the places where there is the hint of reincarnation or the explicit statement of reincarnation, though not using a word that then translates to reincarnation. And I want you to notice Jesus's response and the declarations that he makes in these verses. I think that they say a lot to us. So, okay, great. And I'm going to just double check. Y'all got the verses? Linda says, afterlife, there's only more life. And Eve says, reincarnation is essential to enable the soul to evolve to its divine right. R.F. Gowdy, yes. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, great. So this first one, Matthew 11, 13 through 14. So I have a quote here, but I'll read you the entire verse. And it says, for all the prophets and the law prophesied until John came. And if you are willing to accept it, meaning accept what he previously said, he is Elijah who is to come. So this is Jesus speaking of John the Baptist and calling him the reincarnation of Elijah. And so the question is Jesus speaking in metaphors? And if so, what evidence do we have that he's speaking metaphorically? And if it's not a metaphor, then can we think of his statement as an explicit declaration? That what he says is, for all the prophets and the law prophesied until John came. And if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who is to come. How should we view this statement? He is Elijah who is to come. John the Baptist. And so, no, there's nowhere in the scripture where you're going to find that Jesus explicitly says, I believe in reincarnation. But you will find statements like this that you then must do something with. How do you think about this? How do you consider it? Let's move now to Mark 9, 11 through 13. And in this verse, it says, then they asked him, why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? He said to them, Elijah is indeed coming first to restore all things. How then is it written about the Son of Man, that he is to go through many sufferings and he be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written about him. It would be hard to state any more clearly that John the Baptist was the reincarnation of Elijah. And the question I have for you is, do you see any other way to consider this statement a direct assumption? What do you see? And that's a question, it's not rhetorical. What do you see with that statement? Neil says, consider that you were once a rock, a blade of grass, a bug, a bird, and each of those many, many times, but you don't go back to being a bug. Beyond human form, there are higher levels of material expression, a planet, a star, a galaxy. Yes, Neil, I want to come back to this blade of grass, bug, rock, because I said in that class I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I don't want to lose that comment. So what can I do with it? Can I pin it? Okay. All right. Just bring that back up when I get to it, because anyway, I don't want to get ahead, but I don't want to lose that comment. But when you guys see this statement, what do you see? I think the Bible tells of Jesus teaching his disciples that things that were not for public dissemination. Right. 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 I think that when you look at this, I tell you that Elijah has come, and they've done all that they said they were going to do to him. There's no way to be more clear to say in saying that John the Baptist is Elijah. Matthew 16, 13 through 15. This reads, now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, but others say Elijah, and still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And he said to them, but who do you say I am? Now, this passage you're probably very familiar with because it tends to be given the emphasis on the answer that Peter gives to Jesus's question. And what he says is, thou art the Christ. And he says, flesh and blood didn't reveal it to you. And so, and that kind of wraps up the commentary on this verse. But what I want you to notice is that Jesus, who is somebody who who easily denounced whatever he felt passionately against, remains curiously quiet on reincarnation. He instead of saying, oh, no, don't, that's a wrong interpretation, right? He doesn't denounce it. He presses for an understanding really of how his disciples see him. I get that these other people think that I'm the reincarnation, but tell me what you think. I want you to notice he doesn't confirm or reject this obvious belief in reincarnation. And when you think about Jesus, he is someone who does not bite his tongue. This is not a dude that just holds on to what he thinks and says nothing. So if he is not disputing the claims to reincarnation, what are we to make of it? What are we to make of what he thinks of reincarnation? And finally, this is John 9, 1-3. And it says, as he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. Again, Jesus does not reject the idea of reincarnation, which may mean that he accepted it or at least was open-minded about it. And let's keep in mind, Jesus is not a character who refuses to speak against that which he does not believe or support. We have plenty of instances where he speaks against a teaching or a belief, but on the subject of reincarnation, when it is presented to him, Jesus remains silent. And so we can take his relative silence in a couple of ways. Even though reincarnation is a widely held belief, because it keeps coming up, not just here, but in other areas in the New Testament. It's a widely held belief in Jesus's lifetime. Maybe Jesus just never takes a position on reincarnation. That's possible. It's kind of like, someone may have some political beliefs or they never take a position. Neil says, I think it's like you said in your blog, that it is more important that what you are now and what you do now. Yes. But perhaps he never took a position. Perhaps he never took a position. And so people could come to him with whatever they wanted to come to him with. And it was like, okay. Or maybe the belief in reincarnation was so common and widely accepted that Jesus had no reason to comment for or against it. We have things like that. We have things like that in our world today where the belief in it is so common that to say it, there's no need to say it because it's just part of how we do things in the world today. It would be, this isn't the best example, but it's the first one that came to my mind. It would be like saying someone wrote a story. The story is set in present day, or maybe the story is set a few years in the future. This is not going to be the greatest example, but it's the one that came to mind. And okay, maybe this is a little bit better. Okay, I was going to do something with handwriting because they've stopped teaching cursive writing in schools, but it would be like a kid, sitting down to write, And, he wrote a letter to his dad. This is the year 2025. He wrote a letter to his dad, and he wanted to say the things that were on his heart that meant the most to him. And he wrote in cursive. If you were an historian looking at that, that would have meaning, and it would tell you something about the character of the person. Because in 2025, young people only know how to print unless they've had someone in their life teach them how cursive writing. And so it's just where our world is going, that everything is in print. And so if we had not made the switch seemingly universally in our school systems, where we stopped teaching penmanship to children because everything is electronic, there'd be no reason to mention it, because it'd be just so widely accepted that there's no reason, to question it or to think about it, because why would you need to do that? No, and so it's that you can have something like that in the culture that's so widely accepted that there's no reason to say anything about it. It's anyone reading it in present day, or anyone considering it at that time, would know that this was part of the fabric of how people saw at that time. Here's something. So with sexuality, there was no concept of gay and straight. That people going back and saying that the Bible speaks against homosexuality. Well, the Bible really doesn't say anything about homosexuality. What it speaks to are sexual relations, but there was no concept of gay and straight. Those are modern conceptions. And that there were regularly men who had young men who were their concubines. Find a clean way to say that. And so if someone were caught in an act, that it was always the person that was penetrated that was at fault. I sent out a thing. This Bart Ehrman talks about this in some research, that there was just no concept. There was no way to think about it. Women were considered lesser men. They weren't like, say, separate genders, where it was like they were on their way to becoming men. They had penises that weren't fully formed. I mean, it was just a way, like, sometimes you got to get into the fabric of how things are thought about at the time. And sometimes we're reading with a 21st century sensibility, trying to make something make sense in a 21st, make a first century concept make sense in a 21st century world. And you can't do it. That's just not how it works. And so the idea is that perhaps reincarnation is one of those things where it's just so much a part of the fabric that everybody believes it. That you believe it so much that who would think to say that you don't believe it? Who would think to say that you couldn't do it? So Ray says, I wonder if our definition of reincarnation is too narrow. Possibly. Linda says, like the sun comes up tomorrow, it's standard. Yes. Ray says, I say that to say that if reincarnation is possible, might be a concept that is too big to grasp with the human mind. I think we are trying to deal with a spiritual concept that is much bigger than our language to grasp. That may be. That may actually be. Yes, I'm willing to go for that. So the question is, do past lives matter? Do past lives matter? And I think that the only thing that matters is the seed you sow today. Because let's say you go back and you dig into your future, you dig into your past, you find out, you know what? I was a queen back in the day. I was a queen. Like, I had crowns. My family owned land. And I think that, you know, you may get some interesting facts about who you were and where you come from. But at the end of the day, it really is about the seed that you sow today. That's really, it's about the seed that you sow today. Um, uh, he says, launching into an in-depth search for who you may have been in a past life may reveal some interesting facts, but none of what you uncover will make your life better today. The only thing to improve your present condition will be a positive action taken in the present moment. Okay, tell me, Neil. Neil says, understanding my past lives does give me valuable context and understanding this lifetime. I'm open to that. Tell me more what you mean. He said, yeah, no, I know what you mean. He said, give me valuable context. Tell me what you mean. I'm open to what you're saying. One of the things that Eric says here, he says that the life you once lived can only be found in the life you express now. So you could conceivably find a long chain of tombstones and possessions and niches in history, but the wave has moved. Launching into an age regression search into our past could conceivably produce evidence of past life or lives, but it could not really tell me anything about the moving projection of life into visibility that has passed through each point and is now manifest as me. And so, okay, he says, here's an example. I have always been afraid of deep water. Okay, I'm with you. All right, I'm gonna keep talking, Neil. So, and then I'm gonna come back to what you're saying so that I'm reading the whole comment. So I take the position, and I'm going to include what Neil is saying, because I think that he may speak for a lot of people who what they feel about their past life. But the only thing that has impact on what your future is what you do today, this moment. And not even today, but this moment that you're in right now, that you're constantly moving from one now to the next now to the next now to the next now. So what has been done, whatever you were supposed to get from it, is in you, right? He says character is memory, genius is memory, right? That you may think that you don't remember your past lives, but it's showing up in the fabric of who you are today. And do you need to know how you got here in order to make a new choice? How important is that? Maria Nemeth in The Energy of Money The Energy of Money. In The Energy of Money, she says something that I think is powerful. She says you're on a dark road and you're driving and it's a heavy fog. It's a thick fog. You can only see 2 feet in front of you. And so you're driving very carefully. And then all of a sudden the fog lifts. Like 1 minute you couldn't see in front of you, and now you can. And when the fog lifts, you realize that you were in the wrong lane and driving head on toward an 18-wheeler, and it's coming towards you. What do you have time to do? Do you have time to consider how you got in the wrong lane, why you got in the wrong lane, what you did to get in the wrong lane? Or do you simply make the choice and get in the right lane? And so the question to ask yourself is, how much of where I've been and what I've been through do I need to understand in order to make a new choice? Are there places where I can simply make a new choice? Okay, Neil, you probably have completed what you said. He said, okay, understanding my past lives does give me valuable context in understanding this lifetime. Here's an example. I have always been afraid of deep water. I would scream and freak out when anybody tried to teach me how to swim. I drowned 2 lifetimes ago, chronologically speaking. I think I was once a drug addict, and I defeated in life. So I won't defeated it in life, right? So I won't relive it in the next life. Oh, gosh, I'm reading Linda's comment. Oops. Linda says, I think I was once a drug addict and I defeated it in life, so I won't relive it in the next life. Yes, yes, yes. Alita says, if you believe in past lives, it explains some of the unexplainables in your life today. Constance says, well, I know some folks who would certainly go through all those questions and changes before shifting to a new thought. So maybe then it's individual. Maybe there are times when digging in is valuable, but only you can decide when digging in is valuable. Is that a reasonable? How do y'all feel about that? Neil says, so sorry, Neil. Linda's comment got in there. I was like, wait, he drowned. He was a drug addict. Wait, what? My apologies. I mixed up the two comments. So I think that maybe, let's say this. So I am of the, how much of, okay, because they do this in like prosperity classes. Like they want you to get clear on your money blueprint. Who taught you how to think about money? And you do all of this soul searching and to find out, like, oh, I don't know. I think only you and Linda are talking. I think that's it. That's fine. Olga's there. Eve is there. They listening. And Neil is saying, y'all need to talk. Y'all need to contribute. But the when like I'm reading Secrets of the Millionaire Mind with a friend, and in that he has you go through your money blueprint. And so you're doing all this, like, tracing back to like how you got to where you are, how you started thinking about money the way you think about money. But could you just think a new thought? And when can you think a new thought, and when do you actually need to dig and figure out why you got to where you are? And who decides? Constance says, yep, lay new pipe. Yes. Yes. And so I'm throwing out that past lives may have value in context. And I definitely hear what you're saying, Neil. But the seed that produces is the seed that you think right now. It's a seed thought that you think right now. It's the seed action that you take right now. And it's the seed feeling that is most dominant in your soul right now. And I guess my question is, how do you guard against analysis paralysis, where you are so caught in where you've been that you stop moving forward? Shauna says, when you have, I think I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Shauna. She says, when you have time to dig in, sometimes, like it said, you just have to get a new lane. Phyllis says, can you be hypnotized to go back into your past life? Yeah, I think you can, Phyllis. And Shauna says, yes. Olga, are we living our past now? I think we are living whatever we kept from the past. Eve says, we are here listening. Neil, that's for you. He says, I believe we are immortals. Yeah. So I get the question is like, how do you avoid analysis paralysis? How do you avoid analysis paralysis, where you are so down the rabbit hole trying to figure out where you came from and how you got to where you are, that well, I guess there's no such thing as ending up off track, because all roads lead to God. I don't know. Neil says, one of my core lessons in this lifetime has to do with forgiveness. What I know about my past lives is extremely helpful in this endeavor. I accept that. I absolutely accept that. Absolutely. So why talk about reincarnation? One of the things that Jesus gives us in Matthew 5:48 from the Sermon on the Mount is, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. And perhaps reincarnation is not really something to be understood. Like maybe it's not a whole big old thing to like go and, erect statues about and write books about or whatever. But maybe it's just the process by which we fulfill Matthew 5:48. He says very clearly, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. People have tried to skirt around that verse, but part of skirting around that verse is the belief that you've got one lifetime. And when you consider the way that life flows, the often snail-like pace at which consciousness unfolds, how else would we be able to fulfill this daunting edict? Today is my birthday. I'm gonna do something crazy. So I turned 47. I can't believe I said that out loud. But anyway, turned 47. And in turning 47, I was thinking about, the past decades. And just, what life has been like. And I feel like I hit this chunk between like age 30 to age 45-ish. So about 15 years where I felt like just probably not 45, maybe 42. All right. But I could, I can feel this increase coming, this season of accelerated growth coming, or it's here now, it's happening now. And there's so many things that are coming together. Thank you, Phyllis. Phyllis says, forever young you are. Linda says, get out of here. I thought 37, baby. Yeah, no, those numbers, I haven't seen 37 in at least 10 years. But I was thinking about those 12 to 15 years. And it felt like growth at a snail's pace. I mean, just so many things not working out, so many things not going the way that I want them to go. Just, just feeling like I'm getting kicked in the butt by life, and when I think about the snail's pace at which life unfolds, that I'm sure that there was probably somebody who's gone through an experience like that and then checked out, right? And I certainly have had that feeling of like, hey, if this is all that life is, God, you can take it, and I just had a unwillingness to go ahead and follow through on that feeling. Perhaps reincarnation is maybe not about being believed or understood, but maybe it's just a way to explain how we fulfill Jesus's charge to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Like maybe it's just that simple, that is really not about accepting or rejecting reincarnation, but just it's the means by which we fulfill Matthew 5:48. What fascinates me about reincarnation, now I was never, one of the things that I loved about New Thought and still do is that it is not dogmatic. If you don't believe anything that's being said, good, don't. Pick what works for you and work with that. So I was never told I had to believe in reincarnation. We don't have any beliefs that you have to accept without question. And I've been studying New Thought since 1997. And at that time, I really had no openness to the topic of reincarnation and was quite pleased to discover that no one required me to accept it as a tenet of my faith. So for years, I taught over and around reincarnation. I only addressed it if it came up in a chapter for a book that I was teaching. And other than that, I left the topic alone. And then a few years ago, so Reverend Della started doing this class in her home on Wednesday nights. And it was, I can't even call it a Bible study, but I guess it was like Bible study, but it was at our house on Wednesday nights, and we would sit around the kitchen table, or sometimes we would sit in the den area where there was a fireplace. On this night, we were in the den, and she read to us from a book that she never identified and refused to share about the topic of reincarnation. And what she read created the first opening in my heart for this topic. And I have since come to believe that we just may reincarnate. I don't know. I don't have a hard position on it, but I'm open to the idea. I'm open to the idea. And so what I heard that changed my mind, I should mention that when I walked into this, there were some beliefs that I had that I still hold today that are fundamental truths for me. One is an unshakable belief in spiritual principle, fundamental truth, and an unshakable belief in universal law. I know in my soul that God is unchanging. I am crystal clear that God is absolutely faithful and unchanging. You can look at all of the universe. Plants are forever plants. You never see a plant get up and act like an animal, ever. The reason that we can read stories from back in the day and understand them is because the plants that do what they do today are the plants that did what they did yesterday. There may be different species or things discovered, but plants behave like plants. The sun always behaves like the sun. You never see the sun acting like the moon or vice versa. Water, and for all time. The sun has never stood still. Don't believe the story you read in the Bible about the sun standing still. That's for emphasis, not for truth. The sun has never stood still. The earth has rotated on its axis the same forever and for all time. So God is faithful. He's the same everywhere in the universe. Wherever God shows up, he shows up in a way that is permanent. The other thing that I know is that everything in the three-dimensional world has its opposite. Up has down, left has right, in has out, male has female. Because God is unchanging, this thing of opposites repeats across all of life. Everything in the three-dimensional world works on this ebb and flow cycle. So for death to be the final expression of experience would mean that it would be the one outlier in all of experience. And it would mean that God is no longer faithful. So essentially, the question the book posed is whether there could be, in a perfectly balanced universe organized by an unchanging universal presence, a circumstance where you would have one thing, life, that did not have its corresponding counterpart, in this case, death. For life and death not to move in the same way that in and out, up and down, left and right move, it would mean that it was the only outlier in this infallible, unchanging, consistent kingdom. And that was the first time that I heard something that made me say, huh. And so I opened my mind to reincarnation. Because what is unshakable for me is spiritual principle. If there's nothing else that you can depend on, you can depend on God. You can depend on the infallible nature of God, the unchanging consistency of God. And so this brings me back to a comment, Neil, that you made earlier, because I too held the belief that at one point I may have been a bug, at one point I may have been a rock, right? And what Reverend Dulles said to me is that like begets like. That for you to reincarnate as something other than the human form would then be, we're talking about an outlier in this, the way that this universe works, and it would violate the faithfulness of God. And again, it wasn't so much that I believed in the reincarnation as I believed in the faithfulness of God. I believed in the infallibility, the unchanging nature of God. And so if up has down, in has out, left has, every yin has its yang, whatever it is, every yin has its yang. Then for life not to have its yang or yin, I don't know which one, it'd be the one outlier. And so I opened my mind to reincarnation because of my unshakable faith and understanding in the unchanging nature of God. And you think about that, God is faithful, that when I feel like the verse is in Ecclesiastes. If somebody knows it, put it in the comments. But it says, great is your mercies. God is, but the essential of the verse is that it may be a psalm, but that God is faithful. And this faithful nature of God, that there is this unshakable reliability that you can depend on. That is always the same. It don't never change. And so how then do we get life, and life has no counterpart, and it doesn't move in a cycle? Everything moves in this cycle. And whatever goes in, if you have a pendulum and it swings, we saw it in this country. We had 8 years of depending on what group you're in, progressiveness, right? I'm not saying that it is progressive, but I'm saying how we describe it in this country. It makes sense that the pendulum has swung, and eventually the pendulum will swing back. Everything has an in and out. Everything has an ebb and flow. Everything has an ebb and flow. Martin Luther King was quoting someone else, but he says the arc of the moral universe. Peter Parker's who said it. He says the arc of the moral universe is long, but bends toward justice, right? That there is this arc, right? So the pendulum is swinging, but it's swinging up. Even, so there is a growing up, what you talked about, Neil, earlier, this upward trend, but it's a pendulum swing. And so that opened my mind to reincarnation. Not that I came over to a belief in it, but what is true for me is the infallible, unchanging nature of God. And everything God does anywhere, he does everywhere. So if everything has its counterpart, then life must have its counterpart as well. And that, all of a sudden, it was like, well, will you look at that? Thank you. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Yes, but where is that? That's Psalm, right? Do a Google search here. Lamentations. Jeez Louise. All right. Lamentations 22:23. And it says, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Yes. Lamentations 3:22-21. Here, I'll post this. Right? That great is your faithfulness. And this is, again, when you're looking at, okay, I put too many things. There we go. When you're looking at, when you're looking at, what can you depend on? What can you stand on? And you've got to be able to stand on something. At some point, you got to be able to stand on the God that you believe in. And when I really got to the infallible nature of God, it was what I could stand on. And tell me if you guys are seeing the screen. Hold on. Maybe I paused it. Okay. All right, let me get to the last slide. So, how do you feel about reincarnation? I want you to take some time after this video to think about the eternal nature of life. If you have no end, then is it reasonable to consider that you also have no beginning? And what does that mean? If you have no beginning and you have no end, and you are eternal because you are from God, So you must be like that from which you come. Then what do you do with that? How does that change how you do life? How does that impact how you express in this life? Just sit with that. If you have no end, then is it reasonable to consider that you also have no beginning? And finally, leave a comment on this YouTube video for this lesson. What was the biggest takeaway? How can you use what you've heard, and what can you do with it? Questions? Questions? Thank you guys for tonight. Phyllis says, live it to the fullest of your Godhead. Yes, yes, yes. Shauna says, he changes not, but some things are harder to change in us. Yes. Neil says, I know that this soul expression will in the far, far future express as a star. Okay. I'm with you. What I was more sharing was something Reverend Della said to me when I said exactly what you said. And meaning exactly that, which is that, you know, that I don't know how I may come back. And she was, and who knows, this may have prompted the discussion. I don't remember how we got to it. Ray, if you remember, let me know. That like begets like, and that is a principle in the universe that you can stand on. Shauna says, the all everlasting. Yes, yes, yes. Neil says, is God infinite and eternal? For me, yes. Yes, God is infinite and eternal. Constance says, deep thought, no end, no beginning. Complex yet simple subject. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If there are no other questions. Yes, like Constance says, like begets like, cats beget kittens, dogs, puppies, God, us. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. For next week, the conversation is on when shall the kingdom come, y'all? We're talking about the second coming. Oh Lord, I'm gonna mess with somebody's Jesus up in here. So we will definitely be messing with your Jesus. Thank you. Thank you guys for sharing my birthday with me. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to pull up the book list. I wanted to tell you guys the book list. We had The Untethered Soul. Andrea sent me a book called Ancient Wisdom, and I just blanked on who the author is. I'm going to post them here. Okay, so we had Joseph Benner's The Impersonal Life. Hold on. Oh, wait, I think I can do this. No. Okay, I can't. So we had Joseph Benner's The Impersonal Life. We had Being a Christ. We had maybe, you know, doing a deep dive on faith, working with the Bible, or maybe moving through the book of Proverbs. There's a book Bruce MacArthur wrote called Life, Why It Is the Way It Is and What You Can Do About It by Bruce MacArthur. Let There Be Light by Dr. Rocco Errico, and The Alchemist, which is Paulo Coelho. And then the book that Andrea suggested. I want to pull it up. I may not get to it fast enough. But she threw out a book that I think it's called Ancient Wisdom is what she sent me. I can't immediately find it. Okay. It's a YouTube video, but we can get, oh, here we go. We can get the book. The book is called Ancient Wisdom. Ancient Wisdom. Thank you, Eves. He says, may God bless you abundantly on your birthday, Reverend Sherri. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are taught not to declare we are gods. Well, so much for that. I declare that. So, okay, wonderful. Thank you guys for tonight. I will put those books out. I pulled up the form. I'll send out a link. I'll send it out tonight and do a new survey. And you guys let me know where you are interested in going. Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night. I'll talk to you later. See you next week.